I was alarmed recently to read a UCLA study detailing a growing nationwide college or high school teacher shortage in America. And while as a teacher I suppose I should be glad for the job security and increased demand that this teacher shortage provides me, but I'm not. I know that I'm not going to live forever, and I am increasingly convinced that the institution of public education must survive if we're going to thrive as a nation. After reading the study, I started to think, why are so few people interested in going into teaching as a profession? Why would anybody ever think about teaching? And naturally, that led me to thinking about my own path to becoming a teacher. The truth is, I don't know why I became a teacher. I guess it's because I loved school and I felt safe there. My childhood was difficult in all too ordinary and typical ways. I know, it's a good picture. But my teachers were kind, loving, generous, extremely patient people who often saw in me that which I could not see in myself. My teachers looked out for me. I guess I started thinking about teaching when I was in Newbury Park High School. That's me. Well, not that one. Yeah. I was not a great student. I was not a stellar student. I was lazy and loud and obnoxious, and I had bad fashion sense. But I found that I could do well in school when I tried, even if I didn't do my homework. I had potential. My teachers saw that, and they called it out. There was Dan Pry, my freshman football and wrestling coach. Coach Pry taught me that not everybody appreciates a sarcastic sense of humor. Every time there was a new move to demonstrate in wrestling, he would call me up and slam me into the mat. Coach Pry taught me to be tough physically and mentally, and he taught me to try. I never really got that good at wrestling or football, but he didn't seem to care, as long as I tried. Then there was L. Ellis. He was my 10th grade and 12th grade English teacher. He was a rock star. In 10th grade, Mr. Ellis went off script, and he taught us about art and architecture and literature and music from the Renaissance forward. He took the time at the end of my 10th grade year to recommend that I take him for senior honors English. So I did. That is the only honors class I took in high school, and it made all the difference. Mr. Ellis introduced me to John Donne, Jane Austen, William Faulkner, James Joyce. His infectious passion for teaching and literature made me think, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could go to college. Maybe I could become a teacher. In fact, it was his message in my 12th grade yearbook that sustained me on my somewhat unusual path to higher education. I left Newbury Park High School profoundly changed by the teachers that I had. This was my next teacher. His name really was Rough. You can't make that up. I went in the Army because I think I might have mentioned I was not exactly a stellar student. My parents had not gone to college. We didn't talk about it at home, and I had absolutely no plan. My dad had been in the Army, and I figured if it was good enough for him, it would be good enough for me. And while basic training was tough, I quickly realized how much of a gift Dan Pry's 3.5-hour wrestling practices in an 80-degree room had been. Drill sergeants couldn't touch me. They wore their voices out. 80 push-ups. Is that all you can do? Needless to say, I couldn't be broken. Yeah, they told us not to smile. That was the best I could do. After training, I went to Germany and I did my tour there. And while I enjoyed serving my country and being overseas and able to travel around Europe on my leaves, I started to think more about college, about using my GI Bill, and about eventually teaching. When my tour was up, I came back to California and I enrolled in my local community college and started the process. I think my path to being a teacher was probably sealed while I was an undergrad at Chico State University in Northern California, the most beautiful place I've ever been. I was older than most of my colleagues, and I had a sense of urgency. I had known since 10th grade English in Mr. Ellis's class that if I ever did get to college, I would be an English major, so that wasn't a problem. I did well at Chico, and I had a lot of great professors there, but none so great, so encouraging, or so cool as Tom Reck. Tom taught film at Chico State for 30 years. I took his classes as an undergrad, and I fell in love with film studies, with old movies, and with the idea that anybody could get paid a reasonable amount of money to spend the rest of his life talking about them. Tom reached out to me, and he took care of me. He reminded me of L. Ellis in high school, that teachers get a rare opportunity to not only share a subject they love with students, but to shape their lives and to change the future. I loved Tom and Chico so much that I stayed there after graduation and got a master's degree in English, after which point I really couldn't see myself doing anything but continuing on for a PhD. So I did. People often ask me why anybody from California would go to Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan for a PhD, because they took me. As it turns out, it's a little colder in Michigan than it is in California, but I didn't seem to mind. My graduate studies were exciting and engaging, but it was the teaching that kept me up at night. I started teaching freshman composition at Wayne State in that building in the fall of 1993, 25 years ago. I immediately knew the profoundness of being a teacher, and I had thought what was originally supposed to be an easy kind of fun job was actually really hard work. After Wayne, I kicked around for a while, teaching as an adjunct faculty member in community colleges. But with the birth of my second son, I realized that I needed a steady gig, a career. I had fond enough memories of high school, so I figured I'll give teaching high school a chance. I was not prepared for how happy that decision would make me. After teaching for a few years at another local high school, I applied here at Palos Verdes Peninsula High School for a job. In my interview, this guy, having looked at my resume of short-term teaching assignments here and there, asked me why I was leaving my previous school after only a few years, to which I responded without hesitation, because it's true, that I was looking for a home, a place where I could spend 25 or 30 years and build a legacy. Fortunately for me, he bought it. The rest is, as they say, history, or in my case, English. Peninsula High School has become my home. I have grown here as a person and as a teacher, and I've learned more from my students and my colleagues than I've ever taught. My students now say things to me and about me that I said to and about my teachers. They give me tokens of their gratification, like the one who changed the cover of my composition book from this to this. It's good work. And the ones who, seeing my fetish for Elvis, bought me this lovely masterpiece for my room. And there was the kid who spotted the shabbiness of my school-supplied podium and built this one in his garage at home. My students write things to me at the end of the year, like the kid who said, "Your class was actually such an enriching and fascinating experience that it made me continue to think about whatever topic we studied outside of class." Well, yeah, I would hope so. And the one who wrote, "You may feel inclined to dismiss this as an overinflated view of your course, but I truly feel as though you're one of the most influential teachers I've had so far." And maybe most personal for me, the one who said, "I did not enter high school believing in anything or planning to listen to any teacher or mentor's advice. I always thought that they had nothing to offer because I was clouded by a false conclusion that no one really knew me and no one really cared. I also feel compelled to share with you that you changed this perception of mine." It is that kind of job. It's a great job. Some of my students have even gone on to become teachers, like the ones who work with me now here at Peninsula High School, teaching English of all things. And the one who was my student, then my student teacher, who walked through my door a few weeks back and asked me if I would do her the honor of officiating at her wedding. Duh. Yeah. It is that kind of job. the kind that makes you want to get up in the morning, the kind that makes you feel like you're the main character in a Frank Capra film, and everybody is singing Auld Lang Syne, and they're singing it for you, except it is not a movie. It's a wonderful life. So young people, the next time somebody asks you if you would consider teaching as a profession, pause before answering. Do you want a job where you can spend the rest of your life studying and sharing a subject you love? Do you want to work with young people and shape their futures, personally and academically? Do you want to work with the same people for 25 or 30 years, building a home, a family? Do you, like I do, at the end of the day, want to know that your lives have mattered, that your work was not in vain, that you are respected and even occasionally loved? Then be a teacher. You will not get rich, at least not monetarily, though I'm increasingly certain that that doesn't matter all that much. As a troubled and rudderless young man, I never thought my life could be this meaningful. This job, it's not for everybody, but it might be for you. The world needs doctors too, but a doctor can only save your life. A teacher can give you a reason to live. My teachers made me the person I am today, and I have spent the rest of my career trying to pay that back. Now it's your turn. Thank you.